Looking to buy, sell, or invest along Florida's Emerald Coast? This is Beth Mulvey, owner at Beach House Sales and Development. Our boutique brokerage specializes in waterfront homes, luxury properties, condos, investment opportunities, and new developments throughout Panama City Beach, 30A, Bay County, and Walton County. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer, a seasoned investor, or ready to sell your current property, Beach House provides concierge-level service every step of the way. Visit beachhousesalesfl.com for more information or give us a call at 850-919-3500 and let Beach House help you find your place on the coast.
As school is back in session and sports have started, our previous and future athletes of the week are brought to you by American Charlie Grill and Tavern.
Before it was the beach, Panama City Beach was another small town. And that's the spirit at American Charlie, your neighborhood tavern at the beach. Familiar faces, smiles and hellos from the employees, a menu that steps it up, and daily specials. Locals who gather at happy hour or to watch the game with family and friends and leave with a see you soon. American Charlie, a neighborhood tavern with plenty of parking, located by Rocket Lanes and Firefly, in the shops at Edgewater.
And of course, if you're looking for a new set of golf clubs or to get your current set retrofit, there is only one place to go here in Panama City Beach, and that is Golf Plus.
Are your golf scores going up, not down? Struggling to find the sweet spot and wondering why the putts won't drop? Golf Plus has the experience you need to get your game back on track. Over 40 years of experience to be exact. And we have all the brands you're looking for, like Callaway, TaylorMade, Ping, Titleist, Mizuno, and more.
Our repair shop turns out high-quality work in record time, and our store is stocked with all the products you need for your game.
Our custom fitting process has been recognized in Golf Digest and Golf Magazine, and our technology is second to none. So if you're tired of blowing up the bunker, looking for lost balls in the woods, or dragging around your garage sale find golf bag, then Golf Plus in the shops at Edgewater is your new golf store.
Golf Plus, a sponsor that has been with us since the get-go. Appreciate Alan Watson and the whole crew over there for sponsoring the Inside Drive podcast. Coach Mask, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on again. I know we've done this one time, but now at my new studio, so I appreciate you driving all the way out here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
And then Beth, awesome to have you on as well. Just a quick shout. Tell everybody real quick about the new podcast we started while we have an opportunity to talk about that.
So we, over the past 2.5 years that you've been diagnosed, have been, I put out a lot of information and stuff about what you're going through, and just the idea came to you one day. You're like, we have the software, we have everything. Why don't we start a podcast to try to help people, let them know what we're going through. A lot of people are able to watch and see, and it helps them in different ways. I know one night after one of our first shows, I got like 21 messages in one night from people. So we think that if it helps anyone, then it's worth doing, and it's called The Fight We Didn't Choose.
It's also on YouTube, and then of course Apple, Spotify, Amazon, all those different places. Just search up The Fight We Didn't Choose. Appreciate you letting everybody know about that. All right, let's dive into our conversation today. As I already mentioned, the first half is going to be the advocate side of cancer. I'll just kind of ask you guys questions back and forth here real quick. Beth, when I was diagnosed, when did you realize you weren't just my wife anymore? You were also going to have to become my advocate.
I think about this a lot, and there are people that don't have anyone, and I'm just a person that has to be in control of everything. And so when you were diagnosed,
even me.
Yeah, I have to make sure that everything's being done correctly, and I follow up with everything with the doctors. I make the appointments. It's just who I am. And it's scary that there are a lot of people out there. I know I told you yesterday we were, having to make a appointment for this GI doctor at Mayo, and if you don't have someone that's able to help you do this, what happens to the person? Do they get the right care? Do they know the right questions to ask? I know especially with brain tumors, cancer issues, injuries, you're not not always able to think of everything that you need to say, or when you're on the spot, you don't have that, response. You may know exactly what you want to say, you just can't say it, or so I knew there was no doubt I was gonna be on top of it. So you know that about me.
Well, and certainly appreciate you being on top of it this whole time. Yeah. Coach, what do you remember about the moment you learned your son had an oligodendroglioma?
Yeah, wow. So I remember the exact moment. For him, there's, without getting into the weeds with it, but, there for a while, we had always been told it was, bruising in the brain, concussion, and that's a longer story. But, we knew he had, again, we were told it was bruising his brain from the time he was about 10 years old. So when he was in the military, he was at Walter Reed. He originally he had his first seizure in Germany. And so they told us over there, when the doctors looked at him and said that he had a tumor, we're like, no, you guys were all wrong. Like, we know about this issue. It's just bruising in the brain. We've got scans for, the last 10 years where 3 other doctors had not seen a tumor. They had seen, bruising from a concussion. And I know that's hard to believe, but that's what we were told by 3 different doctors in 3 different states. And so that's what we believed. And so these doctors in, the military said, no, it's a tumor. We're like, no, you're wrong. And so, he was at Walter Reed. He flew into Walter Reed, and I flew up there to Walter Reed to see him and brought all the scans and everything to prove everybody was wrong. And lo and behold, they, the doctors at Walter Reed were not wrong. They were actually right. And the 3 previous doctors that had seen him when he was a child, they were all wrong. And I still, when he went in for his biopsy, I was still confident that they were not going to. It wasn't going to be what they thought it was going to be. And I'll never forget walking in the hallway and, oligodendroglioma, it's a big word, but when the doctor wrote it down on a piece of paper and he handed it to me and he's like, we're pretty sure this is the cancer your son has. And of course I couldn't even say it. And he said, don't Google it. And of course, that's the first thing you do is you Google it. And, and I think at that time they said that, the life expectancy was less than 10 years. And
Brutal.
My son was 19. And I was just like, wow. And it's that, okay, you live in a fog and you're looking around the room like, who do you talk to? Who do you call? Like, you don't know anything about this. Like, we had nobody in our family. Nobody had died of cancer. And we had no idea, like, what book do you open? What website do you go to? Who do you talk to? And it's crazy, like, being the advocate. It's like, no one tells you. Like, they just don't Google it. Okay, then what else am I supposed to do?
What am I supposed to do from here?
Like, yep. Besides Google it and try to get informed. So, yeah, that was the moment, like, our world changed. I'll never forget. I mean, I can still visualize this place I was standing when he handed me that piece of paper with that name written down on it.
All right, these questions will be kind of for both of y'all. What happens to a mother or a spouse mentally when someone you love gets a diagnosis like that? Whoever wants to go.
Well, it changed everything. We have small kids, so what was that going to mean for, like, how our future was going to be? I know that Liam is literally underneath your feet every step you take.
Thank goodness for school.
Yeah, Ryan's a little bit more independent, but she's also a daddy's girl too. I mean, she picks at you, but I think that y'all have such a special bond where, y'all pick with each other and that's your thing. But just how we were gonna make it, it was hard to understand it all at first too. You don't really know what you don't know, and
I use that all the time.
Yep. And you're trying to figure out, well, what is next? And you read one thing that says this, and then I'm in all these Facebook groups, and, there are people that have had the type of cancer that you have that have passed away already and had been diagnosed after you. So it's you never know. Everything's a little bit different for everybody, but I wasn't prepared.
I don't think anybody's ever prepared for that.
It's
for
one
sure.
of those. you always, for us, and it's crazy because my husband and I will look at pictures, and we look at pictures, and this is the before the cancer, and I think your life is always defined
Yep.
by the before we knew, and when we knew. Obviously, my son had cancer for several years before we actually found it. The tumor had been growing for a while, so I look at pictures and I'm like, he had it here, we didn't know it. And,
Yeah.
And I go back and I play scenes in my head of when he was in high school and he came home one time and he had a headache. And of course, like any good mother, we give him Tylenol and say,
Yep.
go lay down, take a nap. But I wonder, it's always, wow, he had a tumor in his head and it was growing, and I didn't know. And again, you can't beat yourself up over it, but you just don't know. But I think you always defined your life. But then going back to your question, as caregivers, and when you find out, you always, and this is hard to talk about. It's hard for me to talk about in front of you, Ryan. It really is.
It's okay.
Because
I
even
invited
for
you
my
on
son,
here
but,
and came up with these questions. So
you wonder, is this our last Christmas? Is this our, and that's hard, God,
It is, yep.
So you try to make the most of everything. And I always tell my son, if you want to do it, go do it. If you want this, go get it. And time is so precious, and it is for all of us, because we all never know what tomorrow will bring, and
it's certainly not guaranteed either.
Yes, it all could end for all of us, but it's we're aware when we're caregivers of people that have cancer, and we're just more aware of oh my gosh, how fast is that sand running out, when it really is running out for all of us. But with someone's diagnosed with cancer, it's just you feel it more, I guess. You just, instead of, it's the taking the thing for granted, but it could, I could realistically die before my son, and I hope I do. I really hope he outlives me. But when they diagnose you with cancer, you're oh my gosh, how long do you have?
Yep.
So I just think as caregivers, we're so more attuned to time and moments. And I know when Ryan, and we had this conversation, when Ryan, your daughter, came to try out for Mosley, and I was just no, I'm going to make sure that you guys have those moments, because, hopefully you're always going to have those moments.
Yep.
It's not a big deal, but it's
No
the
doubt.
unknown,
Absolutely. Kind of getting back to one thing you touched on a second ago. Do either of you feel you had time to process what was happening, or did you immediately go into, we have to handle this mode?
Oh, Emma, we have to handle this. That's just who I am. There was, okay, here's what we have in front of us. I don't even think I gave myself time to really grieve it at first, and I think I just went full on in research. At that time, ChatGPT was a new tool that was out, and I was in all these groups. They're saying put your scans, put your doctor's notes, put everything in there if you want it to explain everything to you. And so I was researching everything. I would stay up. I know you. I would stay up all
Yeah.
night on the computer.
But now I have this encyclopedia of my medical records
Yeah.
that you just,
Yeah.
you just hand to a new
yes,
doctor if you come in touch
the other
with
day
one.
we had to drop you off at the emergency room, and I handed him
Drop
this
me off.
folder,
You hear that?
And I said, "Here you
Good
go."
luck.
Pin $20 to your shirt.
Yes.
Yep.
Here's for lunch.
Yeah, somebody will find me, hopefully.
And on the had a front note that said, "This is what you tell them. I have this. Look at this book.
Yep.
I need this, this, and this done." So yeah, I'm just right. Let's get it done. Whatever we got to do.
Absolutely. How much responsibility do you feel for understanding doctors, treatments, medication, appointments, and everything else?
Gosh, I would tell you, so our situation has changed. My son got married, and blessed to have my daughter-in-law. She's taken a lot of that on, which to me was it's a huge relief, but it's also, when they first got married, it was giving the reins over, okay, and it was hard to let it go.
I can imagine.
And again, they're in their 20s, and this is such a big deal. And Cheyenne, my son's wife, she came after the surgeries, after all of that, the diagnosed, and he'd finished chemo. And so, they got married after all of that when he was, stable is what we call it. Not because he's never in remission, but he's stable.
Yep, stable
And
is a
so
great word for
trying
us.
to get her to understand, all of this, and then letting it go. And still, even though and this is kind of crazy, but, so he has a doctor's appointment on the 24th for a procedure that we're going to have done here shortly. And, I have to, as a mother, I think it's our jobs to let our kids go and let them grow up. And that's when you did a good job, when they can do those things, right? And so they made an appointment with the surgeon who's doing the next surgery. And, I was trying not to get my feelings hurt that I wasn't invited to the appointment down in Gainesville at Shands. Like I would, you know what I'm saying? Like they're just handling it. I'm like, you sure you don't need me? And, but I think that's what I'm supposed to do, but it's still really hard for me to let that go. And I haven't quite 100% let it go. I'm entrusting all of that, and but it's still really scary. And of course, I've already researched the doctor and the procedure and all that other kind of stuff. But letting her, them take it on as a family, that's been interesting for me, and it's been very hard for me. And you always second guess, can I do it better? Kind of research more, like, are you going to ask the right questions? And we've already had those conversations, like, these are the questions that I have. I know I'm not going, and I do need to let them do that. But it's been so hard because he's my son, he's my baby. I've been there, and it is something, Beth, and you and I have talked about before. Like, brain cancer is one of those things that nobody, like, Ryan, I'm looking at you, you look fantastic. Like, if I was to see you on the street, I would never know. And it's the same thing with my son. You would never know.
Yep.
Like, and it's one of those that, but as caregivers, we see, like, when they forget things. And are they forgetting it because they're silly men and they're just forgetful? Or are they forgetting because it's just not connecting? And it's one of those things that, me and my son's wife, we talk about, because, we just wonder, is he being just a silly boy, or is it really he's not putting it together? Or, when he forgets people's names or what they look like, is it the cancer? Is it the chemo? Is it radiation? What is it? Or is it just him being who he is? And that goes for paying bills, just the normal day-to-day life things. Like, is it something that, like, I forget stuff all the time, but you second guess yourself when you're caring with somebody with cancer, and then you don't know how much you're supposed to take on, but you don't want to demasculate them,
Right.
because they're men and they need to do these things, and they, so it's a fine line as caregivers we have to walk, because we don't want to demasculate them. We want them to feel like they're valued and worthy, but then, it's the little things that sometimes get missed, that you're like, are they missed because they're just, men, or are they missed because, they've had all this work done to their head, and it's just, it's kind of a consequence of the procedures, whatnot. So
Yeah,
anyway.
I always like to say, I forgot that because I have a huge hole in my right frontal lobe. I never use the med excuse. I always use because why not? It's there. So use it as an excuse. All right, kind of like what you were saying, the part people don't see. Beth, everyone asks the patient, how are you doing? How often does somebody stop and ask, how are you doing?
I think that because we are so vocal with our story, a lot more people ask me than probably the norm. You are very well known throughout the community and well respected. So people do ask me how I'm doing. There is a change of people when you are diagnosed. There are people that will be there.
Yeah. You
A
learn
lot of
quickly
times
who's
people that
really
you're
in your
not-
corner and who's not in your corner.
Yeah, and a lot of times it'll be people that you might not expect that's going to be there. And then it's just, yes, people do ask me how I am. Do I always tell them, how I truly feel? Absolutely not. It's a scary road, and brain cancer is unpredictable. It controls everything you do all day long, your thoughts, your movements, your ability to be a person. And I think that's one thing that gets kind of overlooked a lot of times, is not only that you've got brain cancer, but this also is your central control system for every single thing that you do every day. But going back to what you said, yes, people do check on me. I have had a great support system, and I can't complain about that at all. I think that, but now not everybody has that. So I think that I hope that people do, if you are watching this and you know someone that is struggling with this or is the caregiver, that you do reach out to them. Just say, hey, is there something I can do? Just a quick thinking about you, praying for you, any of those things, always beneficial. I know, just to even hear that somebody cares about you when, you know, they don't have to say that to you. They don't have to. I sometimes get the looks from people, and I think that maybe they don't know what to say to us. And
yeah,
so
the pity looks.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, yeah, those are always great, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you don't appreciate it, but like I used to remember my son, he's like, Mom, if one more person asks me how I'm doing.
Oh, yeah.
Like he hated that question. And I had to stop asking because I'd be like, how you doing? How you feeling? And then he'd be like, Mom, stop asking. I got a hole in my head. I got 52 staples, like holding it all together.
Yeah.
I'm not well.
Yep.
We
stop
went to
asking.
Tallahassee when you had. I had a doctor's appointment in Tallahassee, and we went out to dinner, and we were sitting there, and like a lot of people in Bay County know who we are or whatever, so they'll come up and say, "How are you doing?" You know, they always ask, you know.
Yeah.
But we were in Tallahassee, and I was like, nobody knows.
Isn't it nice?
We're in our own little nobody
Yeah.
knows.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was nice to get away from but we do appreciate it. Of
You know,
course.
it's
But-
crazy for us, like, because we're now 9 years in, and a lot of people have forgotten.
Oh yeah.
And they've forgotten because he's kind of been stable
Yep.
for a while. We haven't, God willing, we have not had a recurrence, which has been a
Yep.
blessing. And we all know what those scans are like every 6 months. Hold your breath. But so we haven't, you know, even though he's about to have another surgery, we haven't actually technically had the cancer grow. We've been able to kind of kick it back. But, you know, some people, they forget. And, you know, and I don't expect them to remember, you know, it's our day-to-day life that we deal with it and they forget. But like in our situations, you know, we're not dealing so much with the active cancer, but we are dealing with the side effects of the craniotomies, the surgeries, and, you know, the daily seizures that he has. And, you know, I think I mentioned when I got here, you know, we're 10 days out with no seizures. And that's a wonderful thing. But just like how your life changes on the day-to-day, I think that was the question. But like, just yesterday, you know, I was at practice and my phone kept going off, and I looked at it. It's my husband calling, and he knows I'm at practice, and he's like, "Well, we had a situation. I got to go pick up Dalton from work because our son doesn't drive anymore because of the seizures, and normally his wife takes him to and for work, and you know their air conditioning went out with the storm or whatever, and of course roads were shut down, and you know my husband's calling me, can we get an air conditioning guy, and it's all those things that you know on the day to day like." And so my kids are looking at me, and all my, you know, the kids in the gym, they all know. And I just said, hey, family emergency. And I know they all went somewhere dark with it, but it was more of the day-to-day, okay?
Yeah, like life stuff. Like
Dalton can't drive. He can't just run and go take himself home for work, you know, and now they have a baby. And so it's one of those, like, our whole lives change just because we have to have someone that can take Dalton to work, to pick Dalton up from work. If, you know, if they have an emergency, you know, necessarily we always got to be available and ready, and the life-to-life changes that, you know, people don't know that, and they don't know the sacrifices of someone has to go through with the doctor's appointments, the time off, all that kind of stuff, and they don't necessarily, I don't get it as much as we used to get it a lot in the beginning. You know, the first 4 or 5 years, it was like all the time.
Yeah.
People were reaching out, and now that it's been stable and he's been, you know, relatively good for a long time, like just, you know, I don't think a lot of people don't even know anymore. And maybe I need to do a better job advocating.
Or people like being new in your life
Yes.
too, that don't even
Don't
know that
know.
you're going through that. I mean, there
Yeah.
could be new freshmen that have never even
Oh.
heard, doesn't know, you know, they're coming into they have no clue anything about you. And I think that's a big part of who you are as a person.
You
too.
know, and it's crazy too when you think about, like, my son wants to be normal, and I'm sure Ryan, you want the normal life you used to have.
yep, for
Like,
sure.
you know, you want it. And so I know my son desperately wants that. He desperately seeks the normal, just like not having to carry that weight of everything. So I try to be very conscious of how much I throw it out there, because he doesn't want to look like, he doesn't want the pity looks. He doesn't want people feeling sorry for him. Like, and so I try to be very conscientious of that as far as how much I throw it out there for him, because it is him and his wife's story now, where so much of it used to be like, even though it is mine, it's like, he's in that whole, he's got a family now. And so trying to navigate that part of it, it's kind of been a new road for me. And it's relatively a new road. Like, it is their story now so much, even though I'm still involved, it's not so much on the day-to-day anymore. Like, unless it's kind of the emergency type thing. But the worry, the heaviness,
Never
that's
go
day-to-day.
away.
Yeah.
I still think
Never
about it
goes
every day.
away.
Yeah. It's always there, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Beth, hearing Coach Mask describe doing obviously everything for her son, obviously before, he got married, now kind of passing the torch, for lack of a better term, what feels familiar to you?
So I will say, probably one of the first times I ever met you, Ryan was signed up for a volleyball camp, and we had to let you know that he was going to be going for another scan. We had probably just had some conversation through Facebook. Yeah. And so I think that, as soon as we saw each other, we hugged each other.
Oh, we did. We were standing in the foyer.
We knew. And like, your son was having a scan that same day.
Yeah, but they actually thought the cancer was back. It was they literally thought the cancer was back. I had camp, so I couldn't go. And I was so ate up with the fact, and my assistant was in Italy, so I didn't have anybody that could cover the camp. And here I've got 100 kids signed up for camp. My husband's there, his wife's there. They think the cancer's back, and I'm literally like just waiting for that phone to ring. Like, oh my gosh, is it really? And by the grace of God, thank God, it was just a misread. You guys know about this?
Yep.
They
Yes.
just read it wrong, and it wasn't back. And thank goodness. But yeah, no, we hugged and embraced, and there was a connection there I think we'll always have.
Yeah, and you said to me, because I couldn't be with him either. I mean, I had 2 kids. I think it was summertime. It was summertime, of course, because it was a camp. But I had Liam going to one camp, her going to another camp, or to your camp, and you said I've got her. So you just don't worry about her today.
Yeah.
I've got her. I know what you're.
Yeah. And I think I needed her as much as she needed me in that day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But, and again, and it's crazy. We had probably another 100 kids in that gym, and nobody knew. And not that they should know,
Right.
but the heaviness, and I think that goes for just anybody else dealing with cancer that's out there. Like, you just don't know that weight that everybody else is carrying. And again, it's so hard for me not to cry just because you see it. And I always try to tell people, just try to be kind.
Right.
And some of the stuff that people complain or choose, and again, it is a choice to pick and choose of what you're going to choose to be angry about or whatever. And there's stuff like that, what we're going through on a day-to-day basis, and we've got our big brave coats on, and we're trying to fight it and just live as much as a normal life. And and nobody knew. Nobody knew that day but you and me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Obviously, crazy how that's
Yeah.
such a great thing for people to realize that, I always, when I had staff when I was at Baypoint, I always said, you never know what somebody's dealing with when they walk up to that front counter. If they're not in a good mood, you have no idea why. So just be kind to people, and that obviously flows right into the same conversation. Coach, what's different? Obviously, I've already mentioned before, your daughter-in-law has kind of taken the torch, but what's different about advocating for your child versus what you hear Beth describing as for a spouse?
I think for your child, it's one of those, it goes back to what I said before, he wants to be normal as much as possible, but you also have to be the one who says, okay, when things arrive, like he's about to, we're looking forward to this new surgery we're about to have. And, I brought it up several years ago that, this is probably going to be something that we have to look into. It's like planting the seed. He is an adult. Yeah, he is still my child. He ultimately gets to make a decision of what he wants to do, how he wants to do it. And so that part, advocating for it, I think as a mother, I can't push too hard. And I have to kind of throw this idea out there and be like, okay, what's this next step? Because we know, Beth, like, I wish and I pray that, okay, we had cancer, it's treated, it's stable, we never have to think about it again. But unfortunately, with what we deal with, there's always going to be, what are we going to have to do next? and this is it's a lifelong diagnosis. It's not like you hear people who, and this is not to demean anybody with any type of cancer because it's all awful, but sometimes you hear somebody, oh, they beat leukemia, they beat this, they, and not saying you and my son's not going to beat this, but it's always going to be there. And so we always have to be prepared for the next step. Like Dalton's cancer, it's got like a 95% recurrence rate. And when he first got diagnosed, they said it was a terminal diagnosis. And I'm like, terminal when? And they're like, he could get several decades out of it. And I'm like, he's 19. So several, is that 2? Is that 3? Is that 4?
Yep.
And the doctor was real honest. He said, it's a slim chance that he will outlive you. And that was hard to hear.
Yeah.
And so it's okay. So I'm always thinking, what do we do next? He's had really 9 great years. And I'm telling you, the 9 years that we've had, they have been fantastic years. And he's gotten married. We have a grandbaby. He is a fantastic dad, and he's living all these great things. But I'm always thinking, okay, what's the next? Like, what's the next thing that we have to do? And I love the fact that he gets to have a family, and he has a daughter, and he's living his best life right now as his family. But as the mother,
Yep.
I'm always thinking, okay, they're living this great life, but what if? Like, what if the next thing, like, what if we have an MRI that comes back and they say, okay, like, are we ready? Like, and do we get a 2nd, 3rd, 4th diagnosis? Do we go to California? Do we go to Johns Hopkins? Like, currently we go to Shands, but like, what do we do? So that's the part that's different. I'm always thinking, like, okay, are we ready for what comes next? Because I think in this situation, we always know more than likely there's going to be a next. When is it going to happen? What decisions do we make? Are we prepared? So yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Anything you want to add to that, Beth?
I think she's spot on. Like with brain cancer, it never really goes away, and so you don't know when, and you don't know what's going to be next, but so it's always in the back of your mind, like, what are we dealing with? What are we going to be up against next? And there's no timeline. There's no, well, when this happens, this is what's going to happen. You just kind of have to go with the punches, and that's really scary, but that's brain cancer.
Yeah, it's certainly we have a scan coming up on Saturday. So I'm like, we're trying to find out some information. We're actually going to do a perfusion. We like to do those every once in a while just to make sure that there's nothing that they can't see with and without contrast. But it's like, now this Keytruda that I've been doing has created the colitis issue. So now I got to meet with the GI over there at Mayo to make sure that doesn't get any worse, because that was not fun. And so I've since stopped Keytruda, and I'll have to pick up something again at some point. I just don't know what and when. So that kind of echoes your point there, that there's always the next step. You just don't know what that next step is until you take the first step in the next step, if that even makes sense. Just want to remind everybody watching on Facebook, if you share this live stream and then comment shared, you'll be entered to win a $100 Firefly gift card. Appreciate Dave Trepanier donating that for our 1-year anniversary show. Getting back to the questions, what have each of you learned about the person you're fighting alongside that you didn't know before cancer? And I have to use my finger to point when I'm reading, because I don't read well if I don't do something else along the way. I just realized that the other day.
You want to take that one back first?
Sure,
Okay.
I will. I think that a lot of times people can get really down, and I would have probably, if it were me, I won't say that I ever would have expected you to be down, but I think that you've really surprised me in how well you've handled this, how strong you have been for the community, for yourself, for me, for the kids. I think your positive attitude has been something that I would have never been able to.
Well, and that's something I've preached my whole life too, is like she said, you have choices. And I say this all the time. People are probably tired of me saying it. When you wake up every morning, you have a choice to be positive or negative, and I just choose to be positive, regardless of what I'm dealing with. It's just because the power of positive thinking is a real thing. So I totally appreciate you saying that. Coach?
Yeah, I would think, like, my son really surprised me. When he got diagnosed, he was 19. So, and that was, oh gosh, that was tough, because here he was 19, he was 2 weeks away from going to Ranger school. He wanted to be an Army Ranger. He's 6'5", 230 pounds, best shape of his life. And again, we look at those pictures, the before we knew and after we knew. And it was one of those, it's just like, holy smokes, like how he's going to take this. And I think there for a while in the beginning, I think with anybody, you know, he was depressed, and we were depressed. My husband, you know, we had the biopsy, and it took us 3 weeks to find out, and it was the longest 3 weeks of our life.
Yep.
Because it was the biopsy, and they thought it was going to be at a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then they got their first stuff back, and they didn't tell us, and they said, no, we got to send it back off. We want to get more detailed kind of pathology to see really what it was. And long 3 weeks, and in that 3 weeks, you know, it was hard waiting for it. And then when we got the news, we had to go through this part, and it took a while. We had to grieve the death of the life we thought he was going to have.
Yep.
And that was hard. Because, you know, as a mother of a 19-year-old, you know, he was in the military. He loved his country, and he still loves his country. But he wanted to fight. Like, that was his dream. He wanted to be an Army Ranger. He wanted to be overseas, and he wanted to fight, you know, for America. And that was it. And when, you know, he got discharged medically from the military and retired medically from the military, that was hard because he had to grieve that. And he went through depression. I think we all did. And then we grieved the life that we thought he was going to have, you know, because we thought, oh gosh, you know, he's going to do this and, you know, get married, have a bunch of kids, and this was going to be his life, and he was going to be this big, strong man, and he wanted to go into the profession my husband has after the military, and obviously all of that was taken from him. Yep. And you guys know how that feels, and you feel like you're robbed, and at being 19 years old, you're robbed of the life that you dreamt for yourself, and you're like, okay, what does this new life look like? And I think on the last show we talked about a year ago, you know, we were really nervous about my son having children. And thank God, you know, he was able, we had a great oncologist that told him to make sure he banks some sperm if he wants to be a father one day, because we went really aggressive with the treatment. And with the chemo, the radiation, it was really aggressive because we wanted longevity. We wanted life for our son. And so when he got married, obviously he wanted this family, and we wanted that for him because that's the life before cancer. That's the life he wanted. And but we were really nervous of what that would look like. And still, there is, being completely raw and honest, we still are very nervous. And I know, Beth, that you can understand this. Like, so he is now a father to our granddaughter, Monroe, who's 6 months old. Shout out to Monroe. And anyway, who is literally our world. We love her and are so blessed to have her. But, you know, it does make us very, very nervous. What does this look like? What does it look like when, you know, Monroe starts kindergarten? You know, like, they serve you with these terminal papers and say, you know, you're not going to survive this at some point. And you're like, okay, but what does that mean for now my son's daughter, you know, and his wife? And it's one of those, we want to forget, like, we have to deal with that, and we want to live just this normal life, but we also, it's always there. And so we're always thinking about it. And, you know, so that's the hard part, you know, grieving the life that you really wanted and you still want, like, for your family and for my son and his family. Like, I still want that life for them, but where does that reality and that want kind of meet?
Yeah, I mean, it's that always there thing is just one of the hardest parts, because I do forget sometimes, but then there's always things in life that remind you. You know, you're watching TV, there's a cancer diagnosis in the show, there's a Keytruda commercial that pops up every 2 seconds and reminds you of the, yeah, St. Jude, yeah. You're not ever going to get away with it, and sometimes you forget. And I feel like, I don't want to say I've completely forgotten, but, you know, I feel okay. I'm stable right now, but it can change at any moment. So that's just what makes it so tough. But I try to just forget and do as much normal as possible for whatever that means.
I think, though, that you have skin anxiety a lot.
Yeah, I'm very anxious about this one coming up.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know why. I'm just anxious about it. More so than usual, and I have no idea why. But a couple more questions before we take a break. What would each of you tell someone who found out today that their spouse, child, or immediate family member has brain cancer?
I would say breathe. You know, it's literally like you get hit by a truck, And I mean, I remember I remember I was sitting, everything, when they were like, no, they're saying, you know, it's brain cancer, it's brain tumor. And I would just say breathe. I know you feel like the world's, you know, caving in on you. Just take a minute for yourself and just kind of like realize there's other people out there. Like you mentioned, the social media aspect. There's people out there. I remember calling a guy in California. I'll never forget, his name's Brock Green, and he has 2 sons that have the same diagnosis as our son does. And it's honestly, it's crazy that he has 2 sons that got the same brain cancer diagnosis. But I remember him literally talking to me about 10 o'clock at night, and we talked for probably 2 hours, and just knowing that, and that's what he told me. That was his advice. He said, just breathe. I know you're overwhelming. You think the world's caving in on you. He said, just take a minute, and you're going to be okay. But go ahead, Beth. Yeah.
I think for me, it's to rely on the people that say, hey, what can we do to help you? I've always been a no, I can do it myself. We've got this. I don't need help. But if somebody offers help in any way, a dinner one night, you know, we're big on like, you know, no, we got it, we're good. But honestly, those small things do help you. So, and when people offer, accept their help. Also, you don't have to go with your first opinion. So if somebody tells you it's this, go make sure that that's what it is. Make sure that you're doing all the things that you can do for it, because I know Panama City doesn't have the
Resources.
Thank you. So I don't
word.
say anything bad.
Yeah.
So get outside of that box and go see some specialists and you know, do homework, because it's not just cut and dry. You've got this and this is what's going to happen. You literally have to be your best advocate. And
Don't you feel like sometimes it's almost they're a chemistry experiment? I know, like for my son,
yes.
like, you know, he's had to change medicine several times, you know, because this has been working and this is not working. And then we think about, well, are you eating too much dairy? Are you know what I'm saying? Like, we feel like they're literally a petri dish as far as like, is this working? What did you do different? Like, you know, for him, it's more of the seizures that are happening that we're like, okay, what's different today? Did you have stress? Did you not have stress? Did you remember? Did you take your pills 2 hours late? Did you, you know? And so that way, I think, to making sure you journal, you really pay attention to all those little things, like, because I think once we start ingesting this medicine and you're taking all these different things, eventually, you know, you build up a tolerance. So we've had to change several times, but you also need to keep a kind of a log of what's going on. And again, shout out to my daughter-in-law. She was fantastic. She would literally log everything. You know, he took his medicine this time. This is what he ate, blah, 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 blah. And so it really did help there for a while, like what is working, what's not working. But yeah, it definitely is. I feel like you guys, a lot of times, and that goes for anybody with cancer, any diagnosis, like literally it's a chemistry experiment.
Yep.
And I don't necessarily think everything works the same for everybody else. Like,
Agree.
just because you're not maybe having luck on this drug, but somebody else is. And, you know, we all know the Keppra, you know, the Keppra drug, you know, the anti-seizure drug, you know, that necessarily isn't great for everybody.
I hated Keppra.
Yes. So
It made me feel awful.
yes. And so for some people it works great. Other people doesn't. I mean, my son's, gosh, and he takes so many different medicines now. You know, we're going to up this one, lower this one,
Yep.
take this one away, add this one. This one makes him more tired, so we're going to combat it by adding this one. And, you know, it's one of those that is just, it's always ongoing, but investigating yourself, like, hey, because you're just taking the word, yes, they're doctors, but they're also human beings, and you don't know what kind of day they have had. Like, we talk about our days and what our days look like. You know, are they tired? Did they really think through everything? Yeah, yes, this is their job, but, you know, doctors miss things too. And, you know, sometimes coming in with a suggestion to a doctor is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, doc, I looked into this, but what do you think about this?
One of the very first oncologists that we saw, we would see her via Zoom, and she would come into the call and she would say, so remind me, what are you on now? And all this. And it was like the second time we had a Zoom call with her, I was like, whoop, we're done. Like, if I'm telling you what all we got going on and you have no clue what he's taken, whatever, like,
Yeah.
nope.
Nope.
And she was fired.
Yeah, we didn't last long with Georgia cancer specialists.
Yeah.
Not to call them by name, but I didn't use the doctor's name, so we're good. We are good. Anything else y'all want to bring up before we take a quick break?
Covered it.
You have any questions that you wanted to do?
This is for volleyball.
Second. Okay.
Oh,
Perfect.
goodness.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and take a quick break. When we get back, obviously our 90th episode, 1-year anniversary, hanging out with Coach Mask from Mosley's varsity volleyball team, and then of course my wife Beth Mulvey, owner, Beach House Sales and Development. We're gonna hear from our friends over there at the Back Nine.
I am Scott Pullen, one of the owners of the Back Nine Panama City Beach. This is a 24/7 indoor golf simulator business. We have 3 bays, 2 are more open, and then one's kind of more semi-private. So I believe what's special about the Back Nine is not only our software and equipment that we use, which is full swing, but also there's plenty of space for righties, lefties, tall, short, any size person to come and swing and not feel like you're just in a tight space or gonna hit a wall or hit the ceiling or anything like that. Also, you actually get a video feedback of your interaction with the club face and the ball. It's extremely important when you're learning how to play, but also trying to dial in your clubs and get better at the game of golf. So we have about 70 different courses that you can play, from Pebble Beach, TPC Sawgrass, St. Andrews, a whole bunch of different courses, but there's also games that you can play like tic-tac-toe and Connect 4 and skee ball and darts and all these that work on your game, but at the same time, they're still fun for all ages. I think you should visit the Back Nine Panama City Beach because you're gonna have a fun time regardless of if you are an avid golfer or brand new to it, and it's 24/7. So if you're interested in coming to the Back Nine, you can go to our website, back9golf.com, and book a tee time. You can also book a free demo. And we also have memberships available monthly and for the year. Our bays book by the hour, and then also we have club rentals as well if you don't have your own clubs. Come visit us at the Back Nine, Panama City Beach, where golf never sleeps.
And welcome back to episode 90, our 1-year anniversary of the Inside Drive podcast. Obviously, the first part of our show today was talking about advocacy for immediate family members that are dealing with brain cancer. Now we're going to make this pivot to, we first talked to the mom, Coach Mask. Now I want to talk to the volleyball Coach Mask. Coach?
Let's go.
Yeah, a little pivot in energy here.
Yeah, right? It's a total different shift.
It is.
Like, couldn't be more 180.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So looking at this year's team, when you walked into the gym for the first practices of the season, what did you immediately like about this group?
You know, I did. This group is special to me. They really are. I think every year is special, every group's special. But, you know, last year was a hard year for me. There was a lot of behind the scenes kind of stuff that happened, a lot of noise that this group, you know, last year I almost retired. And a lot of people don't know that. Last year was almost it for me because it was such a tough year. You know, I suffered a pretty nasty concussion that put me in the hospital. And, you know, it took me 2.5 months to kind of really, truly recover from that. And crazy, we were talking about the earlier part of the podcast, but you know, I suffered the traumatic brain injury, and I hit it really well, but not remembering things. And again, I know I'm regressing here based on our conversation earlier, but you know, my daughter came home in August, about a month after my concussion, and I had no memory of it. Like, she came home for the whole weekend, and I asked my husband like 3 weeks later when my daughter was going to come home, and he's like, she was home 2 weeks ago. And I had no memory of it. And because I had taken the blow to the head and it had put me in the hospital. But so that was really hard last year because I went through all of that, and I kind of had to take a back seat to someone, you know, my assistants coaching the team. And I think that was hard on the team in general because they were listening to so many different voices. And for years at Mosley, you know, it's been my voice. I've been the head. And then when I kind of had to take a back seat to kind of let them run the program, that was hard. So I think everybody felt that last year on the varsity team, and we didn't feel like it was a really successful season from what we're known for. That coming into this year, those girls promised me, they were like, Coach, if you'll come back, because they knew how it was struggling, it was tough. If you'll come back, we promise you, we'll give you our best. And I said, well, if you promise to give me your best, I'll give you my best. And so that was kind of the running joke all summer. when they were, we worked out with the SWAT team. We ran these heavy bleachers, and I'm sure you guys know all about Bleacher Day. And they were literally, throwing up. And I said, I promise you I'd give you my best if I came back. And so I would tell you that was kind of been our thing this year. If you come and give me your best, I will give you my best. And so that's kind of been our anthem this summer.
Kind of in that same topic, what's the identity you want this year's Mosley team to develop?
We talk about standards, what's our standard going to be, what we are going to allow to happen in the gym. And one of the big things for us is we always talk about volleyball as a roller coaster. You use your highs, your lows, trying to flatline it to where, we stay calm, control, and we just play through the game. That has been kind of the focus of this year, just trying to avoid those lows and just go after those highs and kind of live in that moment. And, they had a great game, on Tuesday night. And I told them, I said, well, now that I know you can play like that, that's the new standard.
Yep.
And that's how we will always play. And so that's kind of, knowing that's what we want. But, we had kind of a little bit of an issue this summer as far as, playing our game, because we're a very talented program, a very talented team. And I'm talking from the freshmen all the way to the senior. We have a lot of talented kids that, going for, without being sounding morbid, but going for that kill, that attack, like, not just playing with the team, playing at their level, but literally we talk about, just putting on the pressure, foot on the gas.
Yeah,
and
never letting it up.
Yes. And, and it's, that is kind of what we want to be known for this year. And I really felt like we kind of came through with it on Tuesday night against our game against Arnold. It was interesting, like the JV, I was a little nervous there in that first set, but one of my sophomores looked at me. She said, Coach, remember we did this last year. We lost the first set, but we took the next two. And, but that's a huge stage for those freshmen.
Yep.
I mean, you go to a volleyball game, especially a Mosley Arnold volleyball game, and it's not like, it is a small football game atmosphere. You've got pep clubs on both sides. The bleachers are packed. The fans are just, they got to the point where they had to pull out the other side of the bleachers, which way back in the day, you used to have to do that all the time. But, it's been a long time since we've had a super competitive Arnold versus Mosley game. And I really kind of felt like that's what we had last night.
It was certainly a lot of fun to watch and be a part of. What are the biggest strength of this year's roster?
I think it's the kind of all-in mentality. Like, they're all in. They really want it. And, not to diss or anything on last year's team, but, last year's team's seniors, we had quite a bit of seniors that had transferred in their junior year. And so I know last year we talked a little bit about the whole transfer situation and how I necessarily wasn't the hugest fan of it, but getting those kids to buy into the Mosley way. And, if you got a kid that comes in as a freshman and they're a 4-year Mosley kid, they are bought into Mosley.
Absolutely.
That is their school, pound your chest, green and orange pride, whatever. But, last year we had 3 seniors that had just only been there a year. And I think that was a little bit tougher, where this year, we still have 2 transfer seniors on that team, but the majority of the varsity kids truly are Mosley kids that have been there the longest. And, they have big dreams, they have big aspirations for this year. So I would tell you, I think the strength of this year's team was the weakness of last year's team.
That makes perfect sense.
The strength of this year's team is they don't want a repeat of what happened last year, and I think it's driving them to another level this year.
Who are some of the returning players you're expecting to take a major step forward this season?
Oh gosh, I would definitely say, I've got a solid senior class. I've got my 2 outside pins, my Ellery and my Kenna.
Yep.
Those are my pins.
They're so good.
They are. And then, we've got Jelena, we've got one of the twins. I would tell you, I think one of the strengths we have this year that we necessarily didn't have last year is I feel like we can run the ball from any position. where and I think we proved that on Tuesday night against Arnold, we're not just a pin-to-pin team, that we can run that ball in the middle. We've got Sinai on the right side. She did a heck of a job.
She played great.
Madeline was the middle for us, and she's a junior, but we're having her play, kind of a little bit of middle, a little right side, and she showed up. She was consistent, and we talk a lot about being consistency. At one point, I think it was in the third set, we had a couple back-to-back errors, and it was tied up, and I kind of called a timeout, and I was just like, why do we have to hit the ball so hard? All we got to do, all we got to do is make it fall into the hole on the other side. It's the same point, whether you hit the heck out of the ball or you just kind of roll it in, pop it in. And they just kind of looked at me. I'm like, yeah, Keta, you do not have to swing
Yeah.
as hard as possible. I just
Kill
need
it.
you to hit that zone and get that ball in and make it hit the floor, and we score the same point. And she's like, yep, you're right. So I would tell you, I think one of the hugest strengths of our team in general is kind of like our whole we can run the ball pretty much from anywhere. We've got two setters that, they both, they weren't on the team. Well, Anna was on the team, but she's at the bench. So our setting situation is two brand new setters, and football correlation, that's your quarterback. So
Yep.
we have two brand new quarterbacks this year as far as running the ball. I think they're doing a fantastic job. And the interesting part is I had, parents all, they like to squawk and tell me, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I kind of laughed because they're like, oh, our setting, we're going to be struggling with setting. Shoot, I had a parent tell me the other night they thought the setting this year kind of was probably at a higher level than it was last year. And again, that's not taking anything away from last year's team. It just tells you that, I really feel like everybody's rising to the occasion. Yeah.
Well, and being able to play from anywhere on the court is such a massive advantage in volleyball. Are there younger players that Mosley fans are going to know a lot more about by the end of the season?
Younger players, we've got a sophomore setter, so that's huge. That's one of my quarterbacks. So I will tell you, I think she's doing a great job with the pressure of the situation. That's a huge platform to play on for Mosley volleyball. We're usually top 10 team in the state, and a sophomore to come in. But I'm excited because if I can get a sophomore in there playing, by the time she's senior, she's going to be rocking and rolling and running that thing, So we've got two sophomores. The other one's a DS who she's just waiting for an opportunity. So I just told her, hang tight. When it comes, I'll need you. So just, so she's embracing the warmness of the bench for right now and waiting for her opportunity. So we've got two sophomores, but I've got a solid junior class that looks really good. I don't want to forget to say, I do have, I have a girl who transferred over from Bay that, of course we play Bay tonight.
Yep.
And I know she's excited about it, but she is playing with kids that are really, truly at her level, and it's watching her shine. I don't know, Maria Stewart, number 4.
Yep.
She's one of my middles. And it's funny, we watched a little film last night at practice about last year's Bay game. And of course, she was in that film
on the other
on
team.
the other side. And it was amazing. She goes, wow. And I think she could really see the growth of where she was at now versus a year ago. So that's kind of exciting. But
Her
expect a big
kill
things from her.
percentage has to be something
I've
skyrocketed from that Arnold
Okay,
game.
so it's crazy you say that because we literally just went over that stats last night, and it's one of those. She's 70% kill percentage.
Holy crap.
And that is one of the things that we really focus on. We print out stats, and
Yep.
I'm really impressed right now that you even think about that percentage because.
I've got to choose an athlete of the week for next week, so I'm already kind of teeing up some people.
Yeah, okay,
so,
okay.
Yeah, so I was
But
looking at your stats.
no, her
Yep.
her kill percentage.
70% is insane.
Yes, both middles were right there. Like their percentage, get the balls in the middle, but to get the ball to the middle, you got to have a perfect pass. So that means the back row's got to really be
Yep.
doing their job. So shout out to my back row from Tuesday night because they were passing the heck out of the ball to be able to run that middle to get that 70%.
Well, and that was probably the biggest difference, in my opinion, between JV and varsity. No shade to JV, but the passes on varsity are just so much better than the passes on JV.
We practice every day passing.
I mean, because if you don't have a good pass, you can't run your plays.
Can't run the ball. Yep.
Kind of correlating to football. Obviously, your setters or your quarterback. Would your back row be like your skill positions, or would that be your front row? And the back row would be like your linemen.
Well, I call them the quarterback of the back row. So,
Gotcha.
I got multiple quarterbacks
Yep.
I get, but I tell them all the time, my DS and my libero, you're the quarterback of the back row. So, yeah.
Who has emerged as a leader, whether whether or not she's necessarily the most talented player on the floor?
I would probably tell you it's going to be my Ken and my Ellery, my Pens. You know, they've really stepped up to kind of lead the team. You know, and being a leader sometimes is hard because, you know, this summer we kind of had a small situation as far as chemistry on the team, and everybody kind of finding their role because everybody has a role.
Yep.
And you know, and I use the analogy, you know, a sheep can't be mad at a lion for being a lion. Because a lion's not going to be mad at a sheep for being a sheep. It's just who you are.
I like
but
that.
we all have a role. And so, you know, I would tend to say, you know, I've got a couple lions on the team, and I've got a couple sheeps on the team. And you just kind of got to know what your role is, but you can't be mad at the lion for being a lion.
Absolutely.
So speaking to this, when the camp was going on, we got down to like the last game or whatever. You know,
A UF?
No, this was at camp at
Mosley
at
camp?
Mosley
Oh,
camp
okay,
this
okay,
summer.
okay.
Yes, with the younger girls and everything, and it was the MVPs playing against varsity.
Gotcha. Okay.
Ryan was on the MVP team against varsity, and Ellery was pounding it on him.
Yeah.
And I saw you go, and she said, "That's not who I am." And I laughed so hard.
She's
and
one of my lions.
Yeah, and she's a lion.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that you probably gave her a lot of confidence over the years to be that lion. And so that was really cool to see. And I laughed. I was like, that is so awesome. She was like, "That's not who I am.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who you're talking to right now." But
Well, and it's such a great quote. Let the lion be the lion, because if you don't let the lion be their lion, they're going to do something that it's probably going to be detrimental. Kind of pivoting to coaching, Coach Mask. What's harder to coach, talent, confidence, or chemistry?
I would say chemistry. And that's something we're working through this year, kind of behind the scenes, is the chemistry of the team. You know, we talk about clicks, and I went to UF camp this summer, and go Gators. I know that's not for everybody, but anyway, my daughter went there. I went to a coaching clinic there, and they took us aside and they said something that really resonated with me. And we're talking about culture and chemistry and what that looks like. And she said, you know, I never let my kids ever warm up with the same kid twice. And she goes, I also never let my kid room with the same kid twice or sit next to them in the bus or the van. Same. And then it goes to the analogy, you know, if you sit at the same lunch table all year long, you're never going to get to know the person at the lunch table next to you. And we deal in a sport where there has to be trust. Are you going to get that ball? Are you going to provide a good pass, a good set, whatever? So there's got to be a trust issue going on there. So that's been something I've really tried to make a very conscious effort of splitting them up. Like even, you know, we got a big tournament in Birmingham this weekend, and I already have my room set. I have my van set, who's sitting with who, whatever, because it's easy to get comfortable with the people you know.
Absolutely.
And that's who you know. But, you know, the sophomore needs to hang out with the senior. If you got a sophomore on your team, she needs to, you know, that senior needs to feel comfortable. She's on that court with that sophomore is going to do her job. But if there's no conversation, there's no trust outside of practice, you know, they don't really get to know each other. So I would tell you chemistry is the biggest thing that I think for me this year, this team that we're really pushing hard, that maybe I even missed on last year's team that we didn't do as well. But yeah, that's a huge super focus for us this year is chemistry.
How do you handle a talented player who's struggling with confidence?
You know, I do a lot of self-talk. So we, you know, what are we telling ourselves? You know, are we saying, you know, can't is not a word I use in my gym. Like if they even say it, I'm just like, take off running. Like I don't even see it. Just start running. And when I get sick of watching you run, you can come back and play. But we're not going to say that. And I think it's even as adults in life,
Yep.
Cancer, everything, we're going to beat this. And my son is very optimistic, and just even with his battle with cancer, and I know you are too, it's like, what are we telling ourselves? Like, are we telling ourselves that we are the best athlete? I'm the best passer. And so the kids that really are missing it with confidence, you know, I try to tell them, you come up with a pregame thought process. You know, you're visualizing that pass, you're visualizing that hit, you're visualizing what you need to do. And I had a player reach out to me Tuesday morning, and she said, Coach, I need you to give me, and she's one that struggles with confidence, and she's like, I need you to give you 2 things I need to lock in and focus with. And I'm like, all right, you know, first of all, I've been telling you, you got to open that mouth. You're not verbal. I need you to verbalize. And I said, stop being so hard on yourself. You got to let it go. Like when you make that mistake, just let it go. But I think a lot, just in life in general, it's what are we telling ourselves? Are we telling ourselves that we're enough? Are we beautiful? Are we confident? Do we deserve more? Like the self-talk of what we say to ourselves. When you do something that you could have done better, it's making sure you're talking to yourself. And I read a quote one time, and it was talking about somebody, like when we're in traffic and somebody cuts you off, and you immediately want to stick up that finger and flip them off and be but like, so immediately we're thinking that person's being like just a jerk. Well, you don't know if that person necessarily is rushing to the hospital to visit a loved one. So we need to think about the positive first instead of getting mad and wanting to flip a person off because they're doing this, that, say, what, think about it a little bit differently. Go, man, they must really be in a hurry. Something really must be wrong.
Yep.
And I think that kind of spills over into volleyball and life and who we are as people, that self-talk, like, just try to think of the positive first before going negative.
Yeah, I think that human nature likes to take us to the negative place first, but if you can figure out a way to get away from that and change it to positive first, I think everybody would probably have a lot better life.
Yeah.
How different are you as a coach today compared to when you first took over?
Oh, it's funny. If you would ask my players from 25 years ago, they'd tell you I was a marshmallow. They would tell you I'm super soft this year. And so even my former coaches are, man, you should really make them run for stuff like that. I would tell you, I think I'm more logical and I think through things a lot, and I really try to, the mental part of it's super important for me. And I want the girls to be thoughtful of each other and being kind humans. And just, that to me, I think when you're young and you're eager, you're always chasing that win, like wins with losses. But I think the older you get, you realize, I have a situation of where I can truly make a difference with kids and kind of talking them through just some things. I used an analogy the other day when we were talking about just being aware of each other. And I said, if I put 2 glasses of water down and I poured in each one of these glasses, would you look to see if the person next to you had more than you? Or would you look to see if that person had enough?
That's a good one.
So it's things like that. Like I think as a coach, I really want the girls just to be aware of people and situations. And I don't know if it has to do with what we went through with my son and cancer and trying to really be thoughtful towards everybody and be kind human beings. But I do think, the world really needs better people and better humans. And so I feel like as a coach, I still am uber competitive. And I mean, I think I proved that on Tuesday night because I was like, I'm not going to lose that game. But I think I have become more aware of the impact of what a coach has on players. And so I think that's been a little bit of the difference.
Well, and coaches have such a huge responsibility, not only to the program or whatever team you're coaching, but to all the individual humans on that team to kind of mold them. Because I always say a lot of people, who do you remember from when you were growing up? Obviously your parents you remember, but coaches along the way that made huge impacts have a lot of times that's who they remember. So you have a dual responsibility, and that's not an easy task for sure. Speaking of not an easy task, what does a Michelle Mask practice look like when the team isn't playing up to your expectations?
Oh, I've kicked him out of the gym. Told him to stop wasting my time, and that is true. That is a true statement. I mean, I think with all coaches, we sacrifice a lot, family, and especially like hearing the cancer story and all that kind of stuff, because I've been coaching at Mosley now. This is like, I think 14th or 15th year, but my son, he got diagnosed 9 years ago. So I've several of those years, I've been coaching and dealing with cancer and have a full-time job outside the school system. So, for me, if they're not performing well, I've kicked the whole team out of practice and said, you know what, let's try again tomorrow. And I think it really gets them. But a lot of times I'll just say, hey, time out. Do y'all need to go to the locker room? And they know. Like I'll give them an opportunity. They can fix it within themselves or their team, or we'll just go home. Like because I'm not going to keep beating the dead horse if they don't want to be here. But I've also, I think, as I've grown as a coach, I always realized like the first day of school is the worst practice of the year. And I don't know if Ryan shared with you after the first day is school, but I literally do kind of like an Olympics. Like it's volleyball Olympics the first day, because I acknowledge that I'm not going to get the best out of them.
Yep.
First day of school, they're not used to it. So we play a game called baseball. I think I brought in some Starbucks gift cards. We played for that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But
she mentioned that and said it was a lot of fun.
yeah.
What is something your players probably get tired of hearing you say?
Oh gosh, talk through the play. Like, oh my gosh, I always say that, you have to tell the story of the play that it's happening. Because a lot of times they get quiet and they kind of they bottle up. That I'm just like, no, we got to talk through the play. Like that is one of the. It's like I'm on a repeat. Like talk through the play, talk through the play, talk through the play. What's happening? What's going on? So yeah, that's probably what they get sick of hearing, because they just kind of bottle up and clam up and they just kind of watch. And I'm like, stop watching, talk through it. But yeah, they probably get sick of hearing that.
Just a reminder, you're watching episode 90, our 1-year anniversary of the Inside Drive podcast. Appreciate everybody who has shared the live stream and shared in the feed. Coach Mask, expectations. When you look at the schedule, which matches are circled?
I would say Childs. Childs back in 2021 and 22, like we did, boy, we were the dominant force. And, the last 2 years they've been state champions up in Tallahassee. I know their team looks a little bit different this year, and I think our team looks a little bit different. I think that's going to be a very competitive game, but our district is pretty loaded. I mean, we have got Lincoln, Leon, and Childs in our district. So we have a Tallahassee district versus, in county, they've got Arnold and Bay, they're in the same district. So our district looks really, really, really tough. So it's going to be a battle. We've got to really get through those Tallahassee teams this year. So anytime we're up there in Tallahassee playing there, those are going to be big games for us.
Kind of on that same, would you expect Childs to be your toughest competition for Mosley this year, or is there another team in the Tallahassee area that you would say is going to be
I would
tougher?
say our Child's probably the main one, but Pensacola Catholic, they've got a solid team. We played them down at UF this summer. Niceville's always pretty strong as well. So I would tell you probably Niceville, Catholic, and Pensacola and Childs are the ones that, we've really got to make sure we step up. But, kudos to Arnold. I think Arnold has a fantastic program. I was really happy with how Tuesday's night turned out, but, I'm never going to underestimate them. We underestimated Chipley a couple years ago, and it came back to bite us in the butt. So we're not counting anybody out, really.
What has to happen for you to look back after the season and say this was a successful year?
What has got to happen? That's a good question. I could obviously, winning it all. Going to state, that's probably the answer everybody expects me to say. But I think at the end of the season, if we can all, and it sounds cheesy, I know it's going to sound cheesy when I say it, but if we can all look back and really be like, you know what, this was fun. And I always use the analogy, like the year my daughter graduated in 2018, I couldn't tell you what her win-loss record was. I have no idea. We did make it to the Elite Eight. It was on paper, very successful season. But I remember how those kids made me feel and the kids that were on that team. And I just remember the love and joy we had for each other. So for me, obviously, winning state, gosh, that would be the ultimate. Yep. And I think, honestly, if these kids keep playing and growing at the level that we showed on Tuesday, they absolutely have a shot. But, to define it as a successful season, I think if we could all just turn around and look at each other and then be like, you know what, that was fun. And at the banquet, you just look at each other and be sad it's over. Yep. Be happy it happened, but be sad it's over. I always think that's the most successful season, that when they're sad it's over.
What do you want people to know about this group before they come watch a Mosley volleyball game this season?
This group, I'm telling you, piss and vinegar. That's all. I mean, they are full of it, man, and they are hungry, and they want it. They do. I think they really want to show everybody that last year wasn't the greatest year, even though technically was a winning season. It wasn't the best Mosley year, and I feel like this group really feels like they've got something to prove.
Awesome. Beth, you got some questions for Coach before we get close to getting out of here?
Not really questions. I just wanted to state these things. There are a lot of things that we, of course, love and admire about you and your program, but two major things that I would like to acknowledge personally to you would be, number one, you say what you mean, and you mean what you say. It may not always be what maybe someone wants to hear, but there's never a question of where you stand, and I think that is something that I personally am very thankful that our daughter is being taught, coached, and grown up by somebody that has that mentality. And number two, in our first family gathering meeting with the parents and everything, you said something that absolutely gave me chills, and I wanted to just let you know that.
Okay.
At that moment, I knew we were at the right place. You said, I'm not just coaching teenagers, I'm raising women. And I'm raising strong, respectful, hardworking women who will go out into this world and will become doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, or whatever it may be. But I'm raising women. Yeah. And it still gives me chills.
Kind of tears me up a little bit, but it's true. Yeah, it is true.
And that's a testament to you as a coach, a person, and one of the reasons that we are so glad to be a part of Mosley. And I know that that's probably why you do have, 100 kids at your camps, your tryouts, everything like that. So that's just what I wanted you to know, and how we feel about you, and how appreciative we are that you are helping raise our woman.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, you don't know, we haven't had this conversation, but this week you don't know how much that means to me. Because I'm necessarily not everybody's cup of tea, and I do sometimes say things that people take out of context, and I think sometimes people see what they want to see and they believe what they want to believe, and sometimes they don't give people the benefit of the doubt. And I got caught up in a situation just recently, and so hearing that means more to me this week than you know. So thank you for that.
Kind of a final question here before we talk about some of the high school games coming up tonight and tomorrow night. You've talked about being a coach, and you've talked about being a mom fighting alongside your son. Has what you've gone through with him changed the way you coach these girls?
Yes. Yeah. I would tell you, I think I'm more empathetic, and I see people more instead of just athletes and wins and losses. I see people, and that's changed me a lot, and I really try to be more kind, and I feel like being good humans to just other humans is probably really, I love to win and lose. I love to win and hate to lose, but I do think being good humans, that is probably like the biggest thing that that has changed me.
Good stuff there. Obviously, sometimes positive things can come out of terrible situations. Just some games coming up tonight. We got a few more volleyball games as the first week is officially underway. Arnold will travel to Freeport. Freeport is 1-0. Arnold obviously is 0-1. Trying to get their first win this evening. I believe that game is at 6 p.m. JV's usually at 5, varsity's at 6, but that is up in Freeport. Do you know if that really tall basketball girl plays on their volleyball team?
I don't know.
I forget her name, but she's like 7'3".
Yeah, she's huge.
Yep.
I don't think, that's a great question. I probably should know that, but I don't play Freeport, so I haven't scouted them. But I did hear they have Freeport's got a tremendous outside.
Gotcha.
That's pretty good. So
it could end up being a pretty good matchup there in Freeport. And then obviously we've talked about it already. Bay, who is 2-0, who's beat Port St. Joe and Rutherford, comes over to the Mosley Gym this evening. JV at 5, obviously varsity at 6 p.m. Tell everybody why they should come out and watch a Mosley volleyball game.
Oh, it's going to be, the atmosphere is electric.
Second to none.
It really is. It is. I'm telling you, I've got the best players, but I've also got the best parents and best fans. The community that comes out to support these kids, it's incredible. And I would tell you, these kids love looking in the stands and seeing parents, neighbors, teachers out there supporting them. It's wonderful. So they've worked really hard all summer for this moment. So come out, support them.
And that goes for every sport. Get out and watch these kids play. They're amazing student athletes, and nothing means more to them than seeing, like you said, people in the stands packed out. You've also got Mariana traveling down to Bozeman. Both teams have not got a win yet. Obviously, one of those teams will put a win on their win column after tonight. That's again at 6 p.m. And then North Bay Haven travels up to Bluntstown. Bluntstown's 1-0. North Bay Haven dropped their first game or match. I think it's a match. And then on Rutherford and Weewa, neither one of those teams have won yet. Obviously, Rutherford is traveling to Weewa, and one of those teams will get a win in the win column. And then one thing I wanted to mention, also, big Mosley game coming up tonight. You've got Choctaw, one of the big powerhouses here in the Florida Panhandle, coming over to Tommy Oliver Stadium to take on another one of the powerhouses in football. It's just like all the Mosley sports, the pregame production is just on a different level when it comes to football, volleyball, basketball, whatever
like
it may
being
be.
at college.
Oh, yeah.
And then real quick, tomorrow, just want to mention the games that are getting underway, really week 1 of the Florida high school football season. Union County traveling to Rutherford. That is at Tommy Oliver Stadium at 7 p.m. And I know they're doing some kind of jersey ceremony for a former Rutherford alumni who played in the NFL. Gulf Breeze traveling to South Walton. Bay's making up the trip 2:31 to get up there to Dothan to take on Dothan High. And then I know you got a couple other games in the area, but get out there, like I said, and watch some of these high school football kids, high school volleyball players, whatever it may be. Coach Mask, I appreciate you coming on. Good luck tonight. We'll look forward to seeing that game. Beth, appreciate you coming on. I know some of these topics aren't exactly the easiest things to talk about, but really like to be kind of very real here on the Inside Drive podcast. Don't forget, too, if you watched it live and shared it, and you put your comment in there, you will be entered to win a $100 gift card to Firefly. I want to give Firefly a shout-out for doing that for us. And then, of course, I got an NFL pick-em up right now with the Inside Drive podcast. It's just $20. Message me, and I'll show you how to pay and then give you the password to get into the group. We do need to hear from a couple more of our sponsors before we go ahead and get out of here. We'll start with Juice and Sunsets, the official juice of the Inside Drive podcast.
Looking for a fresh start to your day? Then you've got to check out Juice and Sunsets. Their cold-pressed juices and wellness shots are made with fresh, local ingredients to help you feel your best.
And if you're headed to Rosemary Beach, stop by the 30-Day Farmers Market every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Grab one of their amazing favorites like Island Greens, Orange Oasis, or Watermelon Waves.
At Juice and Sunsets, it's about more than great juice. It's about community, gratitude, and living well. As they like to say, come sip, enjoy, and be blessed.
Juice and Sunsets. Healthy never tasted so good.
And, of course, we'll hear from our good friends at Panhandle Credit Union.
People are who build community. The self-starters, the friendly neighbors, the ambitious workers. And that's exactly who our members are. We're PCU. And with us, banking is made better. So whether you need a rewards checking account, financial products that assist with travel, easy business loans, or affordable auto loans, come see us so we can build the community together. Panhandle Credit Union. Banking made better.
That's going to do it for this episode of the Inside Drive podcast. Thanks for listening, and thank you to our incredible sponsors: Beach House Sales Development, Juice and Sunsets, American Charlie Grill and Tavern, Golf Plus, the Back 9 PCB, Panhandle Credit Union, and CK Secrets and Condom Knowledge. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave us a review on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, or wherever you get your podcast from. Until next time, I'm Ryan Mulvey reminding you talent gets you noticed.